welcome back to the Sports Show. The SANFL has been blistering this season, and of course the weekend had some really important games, none bigger than the Norwood Port game, so we thought we'd bring in our SANFL expert, Luke Marchioro. Luke, how are you, mate?
Good, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Now, mate, you were at the game, and we can talk about the other ones, but this one had a fair bit of significance to it between Norwood and Port as to whoever lost probably wasn't going to be in a chance to make the finals. How did you see the game?
Norwood probably controlled most of the game. There was a bit of rivalry in it. There was a bit of a scuffle in the second quarter after Dante Visentini cleaned up young Mitch Cotter from Norwood there. So there was a bit going on, but Norwood were just really strong on turnover. Were able to turn the ball over, and were really efficient going forward with the ball. And Matty Panos back, second game of the year, second win for Norwood, and they kicked their second highest score of the year.
It's a game that is won in 15 minutes. That's what happens in footy today, I reckon. Norwood kicked, I think, 4 or 5 real quick in the second quarter. That was their quarter. Because after half-time, I think it was about 7 goals each. But it was that period in the second quarter. That first quarter, 3 each, tough game. Second quarter, Norwood. They played really well in that.
I think it was
period.
3 goals to none in the last 7 minutes of the quarter, and that was really the difference in the game in the end. Norwood just got on top around the contest a little bit and were able to punish some Port mistakes going forward and kicked really straight as well, which is probably 15 goals for is the difference in the contest really.
I think when you talk about those games where there's that build-up, if you lose this one, you probably lose touch with the 5 and you can't get into the final. So Norwood win it. Can you see have they got enough to threaten into the finals deep, or are they just sort of holding on to that 5th spot?
If you'd asked me a month ago, I would have said no. But given you look at their percentage is actually 52.4, which is higher than Sturt and higher than the Eagles. So they've been competitive in a lot of these games. And now with Panos back, it gives them an extra avenue to goal as well. Cam Tahini played in their reserves on the weekend too, so he was going to come back in as well. So all of a sudden you've got McLean, Lau, Panos, Tahini, Jarvis. These are a lot of avenues to goal. And they can finally start kicking some scores. And if they get to 85 points, they generally win. So that's going to be a big challenge for them. If they can do that more consistently, there's no reason why they can't get on a bit of a roll.
So we talk about Norwood now threatening, and obviously we've always thought the Eagles are going to be around the mark, but then they run into Centrals, and it's a bit of a boil over. Centrals get them. I know they had some injuries, but it has been an interesting season so far as to who looks like they could be the team to win it.
I thought Centrals were great on the week before against Port. They were really competitive in that game, and they probably could have beaten Port if it wasn't for some Mitch Jardy's brilliance in that game. So on the weekend, they kicked with the wind in the first quarter and just came out and just rocked the Eagles basically and put them on the back foot from the start. And Central's older players played really well. Pressbury, Schiller, Hoskin, Fraser Fort was fantastic as well up forward. So their senior players played well, and their younger guys came along with them in the end.
There must be some concern there for the Eagles because, as you say, the Dogs jumped them. I saw the game. I saw a lot of the game. Dogs jumped them, but the Eagles never threatened them. The Eagles never really looked like they were going to come back and be the Eagles and knock the Dogs off. They never really looked like it. Central's played well in patches against Port, but they were really good for pretty much the majority of the game against the Eagles. At Woodville.
They looked a little bit match hardened. I think the Eagles off the bye probably just coasted in and thought, well, we were going to come out and win comfortably. And Centrals had the tough game the week before and just came out and were a little bit harder and a little bit more physical at the footy. The Eagles got back to 22 points and missed 2 or 3 shots of goal to get it back to 15 points. And they could never get it in that. If they could have got it to 10 points and all of a sudden you've got momentum in the last quarter, but they couldn't just close the gap. Every time Centrals needed a goal, they got one, and they played really well. They were match hardened, and that result's been coming for a little while for Centrals, I think, as well.
And it was a tough game too. It was a very physical game. Dogs played some really tough footy. Like when the ball hit the deck, they were there. That's what impressed me.
That's the way they want to play. They want to play that physical style of ball, but they can really run as well. They've got some good runners. And, it was pretty impressive for them. We talked about the Eagles' injuries, but Rhett Montgomery was one of their best last week against Port. He didn't play on the weekend for Centrals as well. So, they had a couple of guys out as well. So it's a good performance for them, and they can build some confidence in the back half of the year.
All right, we're coming into the back half of the year. They run into North this weekend at the big ground at the Ponderosa where they like to play. What's your feeling on Central's North?
Could be a bit dangerous for North as well. Same thing as the Eagles as well, off the bye. You never know. It's not an easy place to play, Centrals. And when you get out there and see the big ground, it can spook a lot of teams as well. So I think North will win. They'll look to bounce back from that disappointing result against South before the bye. But Centrals will be competitive, and they've been competitive out at the Ponderosa all year.
Norwood and Sturt, there's a big game. This is at the parade.
Sturt have played that style of game that's unsettled Norwood. It's probably the one team that has unsettled Norwood.
Bit of a Jekyll and Hyde, Sturt, but they're in there.
It's Well, winner goes into the 5, and it's going to be a really good game. I think it'll be a really competitive game of footy. So both of these teams will probably be close to full strength as they can be as well. Sturt off the bye, Norwood with Panos back. They'll probably get Tahini back. So they've got guys coming back through as well. So it's going to be a really physical game of footy, and I think 75 to 80 points might win it. And whoever's got all kickers can stand up will probably win that game on the weekend.
And it could be a little bit heavy. It could be a little bit heavy by the weekend. The parade gets pretty heavy, so it could be a slog.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that game would probably suit Sturt. After watching Norwood on the weekend, they were really good in transition and really good with speed on the ball and in turnover. So they're probably hoping for a little bit drier conditions, but both teams can adapt to that, I'm sure.
I reckon this one's an interesting one. Panthers up against Adelaide. Panthers have been showing some pretty good form, and Adelaide have been really good. So this will be a really good game.
Be a really good game of footy, I think. South Adelaide had a really great win before the bye against North, knocked off the form team, and the Crows have been a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde team the last couple of weeks with their AFL selection. So it makes them really difficult. They were 21 points down against Westies on the weekend and weren't playing good footy at all and turned it on in the second half. But against a team like South Adelaide, I don't think they'll be able to get that luxury of giving a team a bit of a leg up in the first half.
Don't let them get going.
Especially down there.
You talk about some battles and tradition, teams that don't like each other too much. Port and Glenelg certainly fall into that category. And Glenelg have been playing some good footy. Yeah,
Port have probably had the wood on Glenelg, beaten them the last couple of times they played. They beat them in the last minor round game last year and also beat them earlier this year. But Port are probably a victim a little bit of their AFL injuries at the minute, and they aren't really the Magpies anymore. It's a bit more of a Port reserves team, I think. And when people start to acknowledge that, they're 0-5 at Alberton. They never used to lose at Alberton. It's not a place where people don't fear to play anymore. And I think Glenelg have got a bit of a point to prove. I think they'll come out and try and beat Port.
And they will have a point to prove because, as you said, the Maggies have touched them up a couple of times. I think they stopped their unbeaten
They beat
run.
the unbeaten run last year. They knocked them off at the start of this year as well. And that was a game where Port didn't have a lot of playing that day too.
That's very true.
Glenelg will need to come out and play pretty well. But with Reynolds and McBean back, their forward line looks a lot more dynamic than what it has been as well.
I know I'm getting the wind up from the floor manager and I'm going to be into trouble for asking another question when they're telling me not to do this. But you touched on it there that the Magpies are a development team now. It's not the Magpies of old. Do you think people are starting, and I know you're a Port man, I'll talk to you later about that, but do you reckon the fans are starting to understand this is the team that's developing our AFL team? Or do you think they still want the Magpies to be as dominant as they were?
I think there's a bit of tradition. You go to games and people don't really know the players. They're changing every week, these top-up players, and there's not a familiarity, and they've still got such a die-hard supporter base, and people go every week and wear their black and white scarves, and they are a reserves team, and I think that's probably what people need to accept, because they're not going to be this dominant force, and you're going to get young kids that are developing, and you're going to get AFL guys coming back trying to play well to get themselves back at the top level. And I think that's going to be the most difficult thing now for a lot of Port people to reconcile that they've been so successful, that trying to build on that over the next few years is going to be really tricky, and it's going to be a bit of pain on the way through. But as long as they're developing these players, it's going to be very tricky. I think.
Hey, look, it's always great to catch up with you, mate. You're right on top of everything, so. We'll look forward to you next week, mate. There's a couple of big games on this weekend. Luke Marchioro, our special guest. Stay with us still. Plenty to come.